Well, good day, everybody. Today I'm driving a car that falls right into the sweet spot of the cars that we like to drive here on Beyond the Test Drive. This car is 3 years old and it has 50,000 miles. So it's the perfect car to drive to see how it's holding up. And I've always been Outback curious. I've never had a reason to own an Outback, but they've been around for a few decades now. They're kind of starting to become legendary. And this 6th generation Outback, which came out in 2020, Subaru has always raised the bar. So I've spent the week in this, and I have loved every minute just learning about what makes Outbacks Outbacks. And I didn't even have a canoe on top, and I never took it into any snow. So first things first, let's just get some negatives out of the way, or just a few little quibbles. That way I can spend the rest of this video talking about other more interesting things. But anyway, the first couple things I want to get out of the way are this 2020 does have creaks. The dash creaks up here, and as you're driving over big bumps, the entire interior shutters. It's not a big deal. The creaking may be an aging thing or just a quality issue. Again, it's not continuous, and it's just one of those things. The other good thing about driving a car that's 3 years old, 50,000 miles, I can tell you the owner of this has had no issues. Zero issues with this, and other than taking it in for maintenance. Okay, one other thing, and not really a quibble. Let's just go ahead and get the infotainment out of the way. I'm okay with it. It works pretty well. Apple CarPlay, all that stuff hook up pretty well. It looks great, and it's kind of different than everything else. It's not that stuck-on tablet that you see. I just would like to see more buttons on the air conditioning and heating system. They do leave some important functions on the home screen, like shutting down the auto start system. All in all, it's functional. I could learn to live with it, and it shouldn't be any reason why you should or shouldn't choose an Outback. Actually, that reminds me, I do actually have one more quibble, and that is the stop-start system. It's a pretty rough, it's okay shutting down, but on restart, it's pretty rough. So much that I just disable it every time I get in the car. When you restart, it'll actually lurch a little bit as you pull your foot off the brake and the engine restarts. And anyway, so yeah, that's another quibble. My theory is that these things, as they age, these stop-start systems get worse. So this one has 50,000, but anyway, that's my other quibble. That specific one we've been driving this week is in the Top Dog Touring trim. And these went about 3 years ago for $37,000-ish. It was the MSRP. Now, I'm sure back in 2019 when this one was purchased, you could, there was a little bit of deal you could get on these versus now. These new are up a couple grand, up around 39 for this. Again, this is a non-turbo, and we're going to get into that later in the video. But yeah, right around 39 right now. Now, yeah, this one just has about every bell and whistle you could want on a car. Heated and ventilated seats in the front, seat heaters in the back, heated steering wheel. We do have an upgraded Harman Kardon stereo system, which I'll just go ahead and, I guess another quibble, it's fine. It's nothing outstanding about it. It kind of sounds like a good bass system, but nothing that would say, ooh, that's worth the money in the upgrade. Now, the Outback has traditionally been Subaru's best seller, and recently I think the Crosstrek may have dethroned it. I'll throw all the numbers up there as far as sales numbers, and then the Forester always seems about the same. Now, just walking around this Outback, I think Subaru has done about as good a job as they can with the styling of a wagon, and they've definitely dressed it up to the point where it's not as cartoonish looking. There's just a few angles on this where I just think it's a little wonky looking. Now, the one area that it has been impressive for a wagon is this does have this power lift gate, and then once you get into this power lift gate, this is really a nice amount of storage back here compared to anything in the compact crossover range. It's just a really nice area how they've done this, and the seats all go down really easy. And yeah, other than maybe losing some height to the compacts, you're really going to enjoy the storage that you have back here. Now, you also get roof rails, really humongous and plasticky looking. That's really my only ding there, but very versatile. And around the front, you always get the nice LEDs on all the trim levels. In addition to storage, one of the other impressive areas has been this back seat. As a backseat passenger, there is absolutely no penalty. This is not one of those things, cars where you go, oh, I want to ride shotgun. You'll be perfectly fine in the back seat back here. Super comfortable with this leather interior and the seat elevation, and just everything you touch back here there's no compromises. So again, the back seat is in really good leg room. The other thing is the interior is incredibly upscale looking. The color combinations, how they do the doors, how they do the dash, simple gauges. One thing is the steering wheel itself is quite busy with a lot of stuff on there. Seems a little strewn about, but they all make sense once you use them a little bit. You even have a heated steering wheel here, which heats up pretty quick. The passenger seat is power in this limited trim. The driver's seat is power. We've got the sunroof up there, not a panorama, of course. One of the big dings on the Outback, it's underpowered, it's got a terrible CVT, and it's heavy. So that's a disaster waiting to happen as far as driving dynamics and just overall driving enjoyment. And you can read one top-notch automotive journalism magazine and they're like, oh, this thing can't get out of its own way. And then you read another one and they say acceleration is adequate. And then when they come out with the turbo version, they're like, oh, you got to get the turbo. You got to get the turbo. This one does not have the turbo. I have not seen too many reviews that say, hey, you can live just fine with this non-turbo engine. Well, here today, I'm going to say that you can. I think if you don't live at altitude and you don't carry a lot of people all the time, again, it's always a budget question. Do you want to spend more on gas? Do you have the money to buy the more expensive turbo? But you don't let those opinions dissuade you from driving this, because this has been actually pretty surprising to drive. Yes, it is slow. Under the hood, we have I'll put the horsepower and torque numbers up there. 180 some-ish horsepower. Torque is down a little bit in the 170-ish. Again, I'll pop those up there for this 4-cylinder non-turbo. So that doesn't sound like very much, and it's not. And if you're going to do 0 to 60 times, you'll go, wow, that's slow. However, it's a very responsive 4-cylinder. It's smooth, and actually Subaru's done a good job of isolating this engine. It's actually pretty quiet. So yeah, I would say the CVT in here is everything the traditional CVT does. There's no distinct shift points, even though Subaru says they put them in there. But the engine is pretty well isolated. So I never feel like it's droning as I've driven it around this week. But the real thing is how this drives as an overall package, the driving dynamics of the handling, and that's where this thing comes together really, really well. And that's that the ride quality is really good and controlled. You can tell you got some wheel travel here that can take this over some rough roads, but that pays off in how it handles the bumps. And the steering is actually really good. It's actually a pretty quick steering ratio, for this type of car. But this car does not surprise you in any way with any weird body motions. It just gives you a nice, confident feeling. So whether you're taking a turn, driving through the neighborhood, or you're taking an on-ramp, this is a really secure vehicle to drive. Again, when you take everything into account. Great visibility. You get all the safety, you get all the all-wheel drive, and you get basically a compact SUV that drives pretty much like a much lower planted sedan. And that's where this really, really shines, and it's been really enjoyable to drive. Now, another thing out here on the highway, you'll hear some other reviews of this say this is a quiet cabin, and the engine does settle down and it's pretty well isolated. But I think there's a lot of road noise. Again, it's a little bit of a subjective. I don't find this to be that quiet. out here on the highway. It could be the tires, as it's mainly road noise, and it's, you know, I got to look at what tires are on here. They're definitely the second set, so tires probably play a big difference. Overall gas mile, you know, again, this is why you're going to get the non-turbos. You're going to get better fuel mileage. This thing is rated at 29 overall, and that's really, really well. I mean, that's up there with like the regular RAV4s and CRVs and things like that, and you know, pretty good gas mileage. And I think a lot of that has to do with its aerodynamics, its lower stance out on the highway, because this thing will pull low 30s out on the highway, and I've experienced that. Now, the one thing, this week I'm averaging 27. That's pretty highway bias. So I think any around town, what did I just say? Any around town driving, I think this thing underachieves. I think because the engine is working a little bit harder. Now, I've already mentioned the visibility, and the other thing I think that's really nice about this Outback compared to its competitors is the ride height. Again, it's just high enough that you feel like you're sitting up, and that's why everybody loves CUVs, is they love the visibility out. They like to sit up, but this sits up just high enough to give you that, but you don't have that tippy feeling. You can definitely feel that low CG of the boxer engine, and that really adds to a level of stability. And getting in and out is like the perfect height. You know, you're not stepping up, you're not plopping down, you're just kind of sliding right on in. Okay, guys, I have satisfied my Outback curiosity. I really like this thing in the non-turbo, and I'm sure that turbo drives great. I'd love to get my hands on one of those. So if you're an Outback owner, you know how great these are. You know, you're kind of part of that cult. And like, again, I haven't even had a canoe on this. I didn't even get it up into the snow or anything. And that's another great thing about this, is you can drive it from driving range down at the beach, at the shoreline, and you can you can take it up to the mountains in the snow. You never have to plan your trip or worry about weather. This Outback has you covered. And that's the other good thing about this that I would recommend, is this is just such a safe car to drive. You know, the handling and the overall drivability, all the safety features. This is a car, you know, if I had a car in my household and I had a new driver, or somebody who doesn't care about driving that much and you want them to be as safe as possible, this just nails it, because they got a good platform by which to handle this car. Again, if you're an Outback owner, you know all these things. You know. And again, so if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from Outback owners. I'd love to hear about your fuel economy. Put those in the comments below. And again, thanks for watching today. Really appreciate that. Don't forget to like, and have a great day, morning, or evening, wherever you may be.